She met him at Christmas. The Mafia boss changed her forever. Loretta's hands shook as she balanced the tray of wine glasses inside the Gilded Rose on December 19th. The room was loud. Her black server's uniform felt tight at the collar. She kept her head down, focused on not spilling a drop. The door to the private dining room opened. Brendan Bouchard stepped in. He was tall, broad, wrapped in a charcoal suit that looked made for control. A phoenix tattoo traced his neck. His storm grey eyes swept the room and stopped on her. The air shifted when their eyes met. A drunk guest laughed too close and grabbed Loretta's wrist. Her breath caught. The grip was rough. Before she could pull away, a tattooed hand closed on the man's shoulder. Brendan's voice was calm. Cold. The guest froze and let go. Brendan turned to her. "Your name?" "Loretta," she said, barely steady. He watched her like the room no longer existed. She knew she should walk away. Every instinct warned her. Still, when he asked to see her again, she agreed. Midnight. The Golden Griddle Diner. She was a struggling server sacrificing everything for her disabled brother. He was a mafia boss trying to escape his violent past. Neither knew how one Christmas meeting would change them forever. Thank you, truly, thank you for spending these moments with me. Every time you watch, every time you listen, every time you allow these characters to touch your heart, you give life to this channel. Your support is the reason these stories continue to breathe. We're on a journey together, one built on love, heartbreak, healing, and resilience. And now, we're reaching for a new milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It's a big dream, but it's a dream we can reach together. If you've been enjoying these stories, if you've ever felt seen, moved, comforted, or inspired by them, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a message that these stories matter, that this little storytelling family is growing, and that we're building something beautiful here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And thank you for being part of this journey. Let's reach 10,000, side by side. Loretta pushed through the glass door of the Golden Griddle a few minutes before midnight. The bell above it rang too loud in the quiet street. The diner smelled like coffee and sugar. Red vinyl booths lined the walls. The black and white floor looked worn from years of footsteps. The fluorescent lighting buzzed softly overhead, too bright for how late it was. She chose a booth near the window and slid in, tugging her navy pier sweatshirt down over her hands. She had changed out of her work uniform, but without it she felt exposed. Her jeans were faded. Her sneakers still had white paint marks near the toes from a job she once dreamed would be more than survival. She wrapped her fingers around a mug the waitress placed in front of her and stared at the steam, trying to calm her breathing. At exactly midnight, the door opened again. Brendan Bouchard walked in without his suit jacket. His white shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing tattooed forearms covered in clean lines and sharp shapes. He looked less like a man in control of rooms and more like someone who had stepped out of one. His eyes found her immediately. He crossed the diner with steady steps and slid into the booth across from her. "You came," he said. So did you, she replied. He smiled slightly, like the answer mattered. They ordered coffee and shared a slice of apple pie. Brendan noticed everything. The way she stirred sugar before tasting. The crack in the ceramic mug. The paint on her shoes. You work with your hands, he said. I used to, she answered. I still do. Just not how I planned. He did not push. He waited. The silence between them felt safe, not empty. Loretta surprised herself by speaking. She told him about Interstate 90. About her parents driving home in a storm and never coming back. About being 23 and suddenly responsible for a boy who still slept with the light on. She told him about Danny's accident, the wheelchair, the months of hospitals that smelled like plastic and fear. She told him about the scholarship she turned down, the Art Institute letter she kept folded in a drawer she rarely opened. About 70-hour weeks and counting tips twice, because every dollar mattered. Her voice broke only once. Brendan did not interrupt. He did not look away. He stayed still, grey eyes locked on her face, as if this moment was the only place he needed to be. When she finished, she pressed her lips together, embarrassed by how much she had said. Brendan reached across the table and took her hand. His fingers were warm, firm, steady. The contact sent a quiet shock through her chest. Thank you for trusting me, he said. He told her about Charlestown. About narrow streets and knowing early what men survived and what men disappeared. About his father dying when Brendan was 21. About the choice that followed. Walk away with nothing or step into something heavy and dangerous that already knew his name. He spoke of 13 years of building power from Boston to Chicago. Of violence he did not excuse. Of nights where sleep did not come easy. Of money that filled rooms, but never filled the space inside him. He admitted he had spent the last 5 years shifting into businesses that did not bleed. That he was tired. That waking up alone in a penthouse felt colder every year. I don't want this life forever, he said. I just don't know how to leave it cleanly. They sat with that truth between them. The waitress refilled their cups without comment. Before they left, Brendan asked a question that caught her off guard. Spend Christmas Eve with me. Loretta shook her head. I spend it with Danny. Then let me come too, he said. Her chest tightened. Every rule she lived by told her to say no. She gave him her Logan Square address anyway. They walked out together at 3 in the morning. Snow had started to fall, light and quiet, settling on the empty street. He held the door open for her. She felt watched in a way that felt like care, not control. The days that followed blurred into something softer. Messages turned from careful to honest. Calls stretched past exhaustion. They met twice more at midnight, their booth waiting for them like it belonged to them now. Loretta showed him photos on her phone. Buildings reflected in steel. Light bending along the river. He asked about angles and patience. She asked about ink and meaning. He told her the phoenix meant starting again. The words on his fingers meant loyalty and honor. She told him those words did not have to be the end of the sentence. On December 23rd, he came to the restaurant near closing time. He gave her an envelope. Inside was a check large enough to make her hands shake. A note said it was an investment in her peace of mind. She cried on the train home. She told him she could not accept it. His reply came fast. It was hers whether she used it or not. She deposited it the next morning, knowing she was stepping into something she could not undo. Christmas Eve came with string lights and handmade ornaments. Brendan filled her small apartment with his presence and somehow did not overpower it. Danny watched him closely, asked hard questions, and listened to honest answers. They ate Chinese food and watched an old movie. Brendan's arm rested around Loretta's shoulders. She leaned into him without thinking. Later, alone on the couch, she told him the truth. "I'm not afraid of what you do," she said. "I'm afraid of how you make me feel." His hand cupped her face. His thumb brushed her cheek with care. Their kiss was slow and sure. It felt like permission. They lay together fully dressed, sharing breath and stories. Christmas morning came quietly. Brendan admitted he usually looked for exits. This time, he wanted to stay. Over breakfast, he told her about federal pressure closing in. About risk. About danger. Loretta listened. She thought of her small, careful life. She chose more. "Yes," she said. He kissed her with certainty, not hunger. They were choosing each other, even now. The days after their first midnight stretched in a way Loretta was not used to. December 20th began with a single text from Brendan just after sunrise. "Did you sleep?" She stared at the screen longer than necessary before replying. "A little." That was all. Short. Careful. The kind of messages she had mastered over years of keeping her heart guarded. His reply came a minute later. "I didn't. I kept thinking about your laugh when the waitress dropped the fork." She smiled without meaning to. That night, they exchanged only a few more lines. By the next day, the messages lasted longer. By the 22nd, they filled the quiet spaces between her shifts, between his meetings, between everything else that no longer felt as important. The phone calls started by accident. One night, she pressed call instead of send. He answered on the first ring. They talked about nothing at first. What she was eating. Where he was driving. The sound of traffic outside his car. The hum of the heater in her apartment. Hours passed without either of them noticing. When they finally said goodnight, her phone said it was nearly 3 in the morning. It happened again the next night. And the next. They met twice more at the Golden Griddle. The waitress nodded when they walked in together, already reaching for 2 mugs. Their booth felt claimed now. It was the one place neither of them filtered their words. Loretta showed him her photos, scrolling through her phone with nervous pride. Close-ups of steel beams at Millennium Park. Reflections in the curved surface of the Cloud Gate sculpture. Sunlight sliding across the Chicago River, turning the water gold for a few minutes before fading. "You wait for the light," he said, studying the screen. "You don't chase it." She blinked. "Most people don't notice that." I've been reading, he admitted. About composition. Leading lines. Negative space. That surprised her. She asked questions. He answered them honestly, sometimes slowly, as if he was learning alongside her. She asked about his tattoos. He rolled his sleeve higher without hesitation. He told her the phoenix on his chest marked the man he wanted to become, not the one he started as. The sharp patterns along his arms were about control. Order. Making sense of chaos. The words on his fingers were inherited, not chosen. Strength in loyalty. Honor in death, she read aloud. That's what my family believed, he said. And you? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment. I've questioned it every day since I met you. Sometimes, his phone would buzz mid-conversation. His expression would change. His voice would lower. He would step outside to take the call. She never asked for details. She could hear enough in the clipped tones, the brief commands, the way his jaw tightened before he came back. With her, he was gentle. Patient. He listened like time slowed when she spoke. The contrast unsettled her more than the truth ever could. On December 23rd, her shift at the Gilded Rose dragged. The restaurant buzzed with holiday diners, laughter sharp with wine. Near the end of the night, Brendan appeared near the service station. He did not sit. He did not smile. Can I walk you out? He asked quietly. Outside, the cold cut through her jacket. He handed her a plain envelope. Open it later, he said. She did not wait. On the train home, she slid it open and froze. The number made her chest tighten. A note was clipped to the check, written in clean, careful handwriting. It said it was for Danny's medical expenses. That it was an investment in her peace of mind. That she mattered to him. Her tears fell before she could stop them. The train rattled forward. Other passengers looked away. She pressed the envelope to her chest, fear and relief tangling until she could not tell them apart. At midnight, she texted him. I can't accept this. It's too much. His reply came instantly. It's already in the past. The check is yours whether you cash it or burn it. What matters is that you have one less reason to sacrifice yourself. She did not sleep. The next morning, she stood in line at the bank, hands shaking as she endorsed the check. When it was done, she sat on the steps outside and breathed through the weight of what she had chosen. That night, she told him she had deposited it. He did not react the way she expected. He simply said thank you, as if she had accepted something fragile he had offered carefully. By the time December 23rd ended, Loretta knew the truth she had been avoiding. These days between had changed her. She was no longer just surviving the hours. She was waiting for his voice. For his messages. For the way he made her feel seen, without asking her to be anything else. And somewhere between the coffee cups, the late-night calls, and the snow settling on the streets, she realized she was already crossing lines she had sworn never to touch. Loretta's apartment sat on the third floor of a quiet Logan Square building, the kind with narrow stairs and a front door that stuck when the air turned cold. Inside, The space was small but cared for. String lights lined the window frames, casting a warm glow over handmade paper ornaments Danny had painted himself. A short tree stood in the corner, slightly crooked, its base wrapped in an old red scarf. Loretta adjusted one last ornament, just as there was a knock at the door. Brendan stepped inside carrying 2 bags and a box, his broad shoulders nearly brushing the frame. For a moment, he looked around as if he was memorizing everything: the worn couch, the mismatched chairs, the framed photos taped neatly along the wall. Somehow, his presence did not overwhelm the room. It settled into it. Danny sat by the window in his wheelchair, arms crossed, watching closely. Brendan walked over without hesitation and offered his hand. "I'm Brendan," he said. "It's good to finally meet you." Danny hesitated, then shook his hand. Brendan did not rush him. He did not soften his voice or bend down in pity. He met him eye level, like an equal. The gifts came next. Brendan handed Danny a long flat box first. Inside were professional art supplies, brushes, paints, paper better than anything Loretta had ever been able to afford. Danny's guard slipped. His fingers traced the edges like he needed to be sure it was real. "For your paintings," Brendan said simply. Then he turned to Loretta and placed the smaller box in her hands. Inside was a vintage Leica camera. The same one she had stopped to stare at weeks earlier on Michigan Avenue. Her breath caught. "Brendan, this is too much." He shook his head. "It's not nearly enough for what you've given me." They ordered Chinese food from the corner restaurant. Containers crowded the coffee table. They ate with chopsticks and fingers, laughing when sauce spilled. It felt normal in a way Loretta had almost forgotten was possible. They watched It's a Wonderful Life on her small television. Halfway through, Brendan's arm settled around her shoulders. She leaned into him without thinking. His warmth felt steady, grounding. During a commercial break, Danny spoke up. "So," he said, casual but sharp, "are you a criminal?" Loretta froze. Brendan did not. "I provide services in places where rules aren't clear," he said carefully. Danny nodded once. "That's a very diplomatic way to say you're a gangster." Brendan laughed softly. "You're not wrong." Danny studied him, then looked at Loretta. "What do you want with my sister?" The question landed heavy. Brendan did not look away. "She makes me want to be better," he said. "She reminds me I can choose who I am tomorrow. And if anyone ever tried to hurt her, I wouldn't allow it." There was intensity in his voice, but also truth. Danny saw it. After a moment, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Just don't mess this up." When the movie ended, Danny wheeled himself toward his room, pausing at the doorway. "Walls are thin," he added with a grin. The door closed. The room grew quiet. Loretta sat still, aware of every inch between her and Brendan. The air felt charged with words they had avoided for days. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me?" he asked gently. "Not of what you do," she said. "Of what you make me feel. Alive. Seen. Like maybe I could want things for myself again, instead of just surviving. Brendan lifted her chin with careful fingers. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, slow and tender. His eyes searched her face, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their kiss started softly, almost uncertain. Then it deepened, his hand sliding into her hair, her palms pressing against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her touch. It felt inevitable. Transformative. Like stepping into warmth after years of cold. When they finally pulled back, her forehead rested against his. Neither spoke. They did not need to. Outside, snow fell quietly against the windows, and for the first time in a long while, Loretta felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. They moved to her bedroom without rushing, as if neither wanted to break what had settled between them. The room was small, just enough space for the bed, a dresser, and a chair stacked with folded laundry. Soft light from the hallway slipped in through the half-open door. Brendan kicked off his shoes. Loretta pulled back the covers. They lay down fully clothed, facing each other, close enough to share breath. He wrapped an arm around her and drew her in. She fit against him naturally, her head resting near his shoulder, his chin lightly touching her hair. The quiet felt different now. It was not empty. It was full of everything they had not said yet. They spoke in low voices, careful not to carry sound down the hall. Loretta talked about dreams she had packed away. Exhibits she once imagined. Traveling with a camera instead of a clock. Brendan told her about nights he stayed awake wondering who he might have been if one decision had gone differently. About wanting a home that did not feel temporary. About the fear of hoping for things that could be taken. His fingers traced the slow curve of her spine through her sweatshirt, not demanding, just learning. She followed the lines of his tattoos with her fingertips, asking what each one meant, listening as he answered. Each touch felt like a sentence. Each pause felt like understanding. There was no rush toward anything else. Being held was enough. Being known was more than enough. Sleep came gently. When Loretta woke, grey morning light filled the room. Brendan was already awake, lying still, watching her. His expression was hard to read, caught somewhere between wonder and worry. "You're awake," she said softly. "I've been awake," he replied. "I've never wanted morning to come before. I'm usually thinking about the exit. Today, I was thinking about how to make sure I get to see you wake up again." Her chest tightened. She reached for his hand and squeezed it. He pressed his forehead to hers, staying there a moment longer than necessary. In the kitchen, Danny was already up, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. He glanced at them and smiled. "Good morning," he said. "Walls are thin, just so you know." Loretta groaned. Brendan laughed. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. Brendan took over breakfast without asking. He rolled up his sleeves, pulled out a mixing bowl, and worked like it was second nature. Pancakes fluffed up in the pan. Eggs scrambled slowly. Christmas music played softly from Loretta's phone on the counter. The scene felt ordinary. It felt unreal. They ate together, crowding the small table, passing plates, sharing jokes. Loretta watched Brendan move through the space like he belonged there. She had never seen him look more at ease. After breakfast, Brendan asked to speak with her alone. His tone changed, serious without being cold. They stepped into the bedroom and closed the door. "There's something you need to know," he said. He told her about the investigation, about federal pressure closing in, about charges that could come within months. He did not soften the truth. Prison was possible. Danger was real. Knowing him could put her and Danny in difficult situations. He looked at her steadily. "I won't lie to you. I won't pull you into something without your consent. I need to know if you're willing to take a chance on someone whose future isn't certain." Loretta leaned against the dresser, heart pounding. She thought about her life as it was. Safe. Predictable. Exhausting. Lonely. She thought about how it felt to wake up with him beside her. How alive she felt simply being seen. "I've spent my whole adult life avoiding risk," she said. "Playing it safe hasn't made me happy. It's just made me survive. You've reminded me I'm allowed to want more." She met his eyes. "Yes. To the risk. To the uncertainty. To you." Brendan closed the space between them and kissed her. It was different from the night before. Slower. Steadier. A promise rather than a question. They stood there a moment longer, holding on, choosing each other in the quiet of Christmas morning, knowing the road ahead would not be easy, but knowing they would face it together. January did not announce itself with change. It arrived quietly, wrapped in cold mornings and early darkness. Yet somehow, Brendan was suddenly everywhere in Loretta and Danny's life, not in a loud or demanding way, but with a steady presence that made the days feel less heavy. He came 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Often with dinner balanced carefully in his hands. Other times with nothing at all except his attention, which Loretta quickly learned was his most deliberate offering. When he was there, he was there. No rushing. No distractions. His phone stayed face down unless it had to ring. Danny noticed first. Brendan never talked down to him. Never softened his voice or pretended things were easier than they were. He asked about schoolwork, about art, about the games Danny liked to play online. When Danny complained, Brendan listened. When Danny joked, Brendan laughed like it mattered. By the second week of January, Brendan brought a physical therapist to the apartment. She was calm, direct, and confident in a way that made Danny nervous at first. The sessions were hard. Slow. Painful in places Danny had learned to ignore. Some days ended with frustration and slammed doors. Brendan stayed anyway. He sat on the floor if he had to. He never pushed Danny beyond what the therapist recommended, but he never let him quit either. Progress came in small moments. A twitch. A sensation where there had been numbness. A day where Danny stood with support for 3 seconds longer than before. The doctors were careful with their words, but Loretta heard hope in them for the first time in years. Partial recovery. Gradual improvement. Possibility. Possibility was a new language in their home. With Brendan covering things Loretta had carried alone for so long, she reduced her hours at the Gilded Rose. The guilt came fast. She had lived so long in survival mode that rest felt wrong. Brendan noticed and said nothing at first. He waited until she admitted it herself. "You're allowed to want more," he reminded her. She enrolled in night classes at the School of the Art Institute. Walking into photography, I felt like stepping into a life she had once promised herself, and then abandoned without ceremony. Her hands shook the first night she held the camera again. Joy and fear mixed until she could barely tell them apart. Brendan waited up for her after class, sitting at the kitchen table with a newspaper he barely read. When she came in, buzzing with ideas, he pushed the paper aside. "Tell me," he said. She talked about light and framing and assignments that made her heart race. He listened as if this was the most important business of his life. Because to him, it was. Their relationship deepened in quiet ways. Shared meals. Late conversations when Danny went to bed. Brendan teaching Danny poker, insisting the game was about patience, not aggression. Danny beat him once and bragged about it for days. Loretta began photographing Brendan without asking. Him reading at the table, glasses low on his nose. Him laughing at something Danny said, head thrown back, guard completely gone. Him standing by the window, watching snow settle over Logan Square, hands in his pockets, lost in thought. He never hid who he was. He never pretended his world was clean. He simply kept it separate. Calls were taken outside. Bad days showed themselves in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his eyes closed for a second too long. Loretta learned how to read those signs. When to give him space. When to touch his arm and pull him back into the room. March arrived with longer days and cautious hope. Loretta's first student exhibition was small, shared with other beginners. Her series was called Invisible Chicago. Photographs of people and places usually passed by. An elderly woman feeding pigeons in Grant Park at dawn. A man sweeping outside a closed storefront before sunrise. Light hitting cracked concrete like it mattered. Brendan stood among families and friends, hands in his pockets, studying every image. He did not rush. He did not pretend to understand more than he did. When he reached the photograph of the woman in the park, he stopped. "You see dignity where others see disposability," he said quietly. Loretta looked at him, heart tightening. "Is that what you think I did for you? Saw dignity where you'd learned to see a monster." He met her eyes without flinching. "You saw a man where I'd forgotten one existed." There was nothing dramatic about their love. No grand speeches. No performances. It was built on consistency. On showing up. On choosing each other in ordinary moments. Brendan's edges softened in her presence. Loretta's walls lowered without her noticing when it happened. Trust grew not from promises, but from proof. By the end of March, their life felt real. Not perfect. Not safe in the way she once thought safety had to look. But real in a way that felt strong. Like something that could last. And for the first time in a long while, Loretta wasn't just surviving the days. She was living them. April came without warning. One ordinary afternoon, Loretta sat in a quiet classroom at the Art Institute, her camera resting on the desk beside her notebook. The instructor was talking about contrast, about how light could change meaning depending on what surrounded it. Loretta's phone began to vibrate. Then it didn't stop. She glanced down, irritated at first, then confused. Missed calls. Texts stacking on top of each other. Brendan's lawyer. Danny. Vincent. Words blurred as her pulse climbed. He's been arrested. Downtown office. Turn on the news. Loretta's breath left her body all at once. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. She didn't ask permission. She stood, grabbed her bag, and left the room as the instructor called her name. Outside, the city felt too loud. She pulled up a news clip on her phone while walking. Brendan was being led out of a glass building in handcuffs, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled, jaw set. Cameras crowded him from every angle. The footage cut between close-ups and wide shots, his name splashed across the bottom of the screen. Her chest hurt. She ran. By the time she reached the federal courthouse, reporters lined the steps, voices sharp and hungry. Loretta pushed past them, heart hammering, barely aware of what she was saying until a guard waved her through after checking her name against a list. Inside, everything was white and gray and unforgiving. The air smelled like cleaning solution and old paper. Lawyers walked fast, phones pressed to ears. Reporters whispered to each other, eyes scanning for faces worth chasing. Brendan's attorney found her near a bench and spoke quickly, efficiently. Bail was already being arranged. This would take hours. Maybe longer. Loretta Saturday. She stood. She paced. Her mind kept replaying the image of Brendan's hands cuffed behind his back. She imagined him alone in a room like this, stripped of control, stripped of privacy. She imagined not seeing him again. Hours crawled by. When Brendan finally appeared, escorted down the hallway, he looked tired but upright. His shoulders were squared. His face was calm in the way Loretta recognized as deliberate. His eyes scanned the room once, twice, and then found her. Something shifted in his expression. Just slightly. Enough that she knew he hadn't expected her to be there. Enough that she knew it mattered. They didn't let her touch him yet. They didn't let her speak. But when he passed, his gaze stayed locked on hers, and in that look was relief. Gratitude. Something like safety. In the car afterward, silence stretched between them. Brendan stared out the window, jaw tight. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said finally. Loretta turned toward him, anger and fear tangling in her chest. "I was terrified. I wouldn't get to see you at all." He closed his eyes briefly, absorbing that. Back at her apartment, the truth came out piece by piece. The charges: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. Allegations tied to years before she met him. If everything stuck, he could be facing 20 years in federal prison. His legal team was confident, he said. There would be negotiations. Reduced charges were possible. Nothing was guaranteed. That night, Brendan held her on the couch, like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. His voice was low when he spoke. "You should walk away," he said. "This is only going to get uglier." Loretta leaned back enough to see his face. "No." He frowned slightly, as if he hadn't expected resistance. "You don't owe me this," he continued. "I won't blame you if you choose peace." She studied him for a long moment. Then she asked the question she had been holding back since Christmas. "Do you love me?" "Yes," he said immediately. "From that first night in the diner." "Probably before." "Yes." Her throat tightened. "Then stop making decisions for me. I'm a grown woman. I've survived more than you give me credit for. I choose to be here. With you. Through whatever comes next." His voice dropped. "Even if I go to prison." She didn't hesitate. "Even then. Though I'm really hoping your expensive lawyers can work some magic." A shaky laugh escaped him. Relief cracked through the tension. He pulled her closer, arms tightening around her like an anchor. "I love you, Loretta LeBron," he said. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And I don't deserve you." She smiled sadly against his chest. "You're right. You don't. But I don't deserve you either. Someone who sees me as more than my circumstances. Who makes me believe in possibilities again. We're both getting more than we deserve. Maybe that's what love is." The summer passed in meetings and waiting rooms and long stretches of not knowing. Attorneys negotiated constantly. Documents were reviewed. Statements were taken. The picture that formed was complicated. Brendan had been involved in illegal activity. That truth was not denied. But over the past 5 years, he had been stepping away piece by piece. Selling interests. Building legitimate businesses that were real, not cover stories. Restaurants. Properties. Investments that employed people and followed rules. The case against him was serious, but not airtight. Much of it relied on testimony from former associates trying to save themselves. Evidence connected him to past actions, not current ones. His cooperation helped. He provided information that showed willingness to change without putting anyone in danger. Loretta watched him through it all. Watched him choose honesty even when it cost him leverage. Watched him refuse shortcuts that might have saved him time, but destroyed the man he was becoming. Some nights, fear overwhelmed her. Other nights, hope settled in quietly. Through it all, they kept choosing each other. Not because it was easy. Because it was real. By the end of summer, nothing was resolved yet. But something important was clear. Whatever happened next, Brendan was no longer running from who he had been. And Loretta was no longer standing alone. September arrived with a final answer after months of waiting. Loretta sat beside Brendan in a quiet room that smelled faintly of old carpet and paper as his attorney spoke. The words came carefully, professionally. A plea agreement had been reached. Reduced charges. Brendan would plead guilty. In return, the sentence would be limited. 18 months in a minimum security federal facility. There would be heavy fines. There would be formal agreements to sell off any remaining businesses with questionable ties. There would be restrictions and supervision long after release. It was not freedom, but it was survivable. Loretta felt the air return to her lungs. 18 months was long. Painfully long. But it was not 20 years. It was not the end of everything. There was still a future hiding inside it. Brendan squeezed her hand under the table. His grip was steady. He nodded once, accepting what could not be changed. The night before he surrendered himself, Brendan asked Loretta to go somewhere with him. They rode the elevator at Willis Tower in silence, the numbers climbing faster than her heart could track. When the doors opened onto the sky deck, the city spread beneath them, vast and alive. Glass surrounded them on all sides. Chicago stretched east to Lake Michigan, dark water catching the last light. Neighborhoods unfolded west in neat lines. The loop glowed as dusk settled, lights flickering on one by one. Brendan stood beside her, hands resting lightly on the railing. "I wanted you to see this," he said quietly. "To remember that Chicago is bigger than any one person's story. Bigger than mine. Bigger than what's about to happen. Life keeps going. Beauty stays." Loretta swallowed. "You're trying to prepare me for you being gone." "Yes," he admitted. "And for you not waiting." She turned to him. "I don't know how to do that." "You do," he said gently. "You've done it your whole life. Finish your degree. Take care of Danny. Take photographs that matter. If, when I get out, you still want this, want us, I'll be here. But don't sacrifice yourself again. Not for me." Her chest ached. "Promise me something first." "Anything. When you get out, you'll really be out. No half steps. No looking back. We build something legal. Something normal." He nodded without hesitation. "I promise." He rested his forehead against hers. "I've been crawling toward the light for years. You're the first thing that made me want to reach it. You saved me, Loretta. In all the ways a person can be saved." They stayed there until the city lights fully replaced the fading sky. They held each other 103 floors above the streets where they met, where they built something improbable and real, committing the view to memory like a vow. The separation began the next morning. 18 months stretched ahead of them, long and heavy, but not empty. Loretta threw herself into school. She finished her degree at the Art Institute with a focus she didn't know she possessed. Her senior thesis became her anchor. She titled it Visible: Finding Humanity in Unexpected Places. She photographed their story without dramatizing it. Danny taking his first assisted steps, face twisted in effort and pride. The Golden Griddle at midnight, booth empty but familiar. Brendan's tattooed hands in old photographs, fingers curled around a coffee mug. The view from her Logan Square window at dawn. Christmas lights still taped to the wall months later. She also photographed absence. His side of the bed untouched. His place at the table left open. His coat still hanging by the door, carrying his shape without his body. Hope threaded through it all. Danny standing with support, stronger each month. Loretta in her graduation cap, smiling through tears. Spring flowers pushing up through cracks in sidewalks across the city. Letters arrived every day. Brendan wrote about small things. Books he read. Men he observed quietly changing. Long reflections about choices and accountability. He wrote about missing her voice. About counting days. Phone calls came when allowed. His voice was her lifeline. She told him about Danny's progress. About assignments. About photos that finally felt like truth. She lived fully because he asked her to. Inside, Brendan used the time deliberately. He cut ties completely. Sold what needed selling. Let go of what he once clung to for identity. He did not romanticize the process. He endured it. Changed through it. They counted days together, even when apart. Each letter, each call, each photograph carried the same promise. This was not the end. It was the waiting that made the reunion possible. Spring returned to Chicago gently. Forsythia bloomed bright and unapologetic in Lincoln Park. Tulips rose in careful rows through Millennium Park, color breaking through months of gray. The city felt like it was exhaling after holding its breath. Loretta stood at the entrance of the federal facility in Teote, Indiana, her camera bag resting against her hip. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. 18 months of letters, calls, and waiting pressed into this single moment. She watched the gate with a focus that made the rest of the world fade. When Brendan walked out, she barely recognized him at first. He was thinner. The sharp edges that once defined him had softened. There was a lightness to the way he moved, as if something heavy had finally been set down. When his eyes found her, his face changed completely. His smile came slow and unguarded, rare and real. They met in the middle of the parking lot. Brendan dropped his small bag and lifted her off her feet, without thinking, spinning her once as she laughed and cried at the same time. "Did you really think I wouldn't come?" she said through tears. He rested his forehead against hers. "I hoped." But hope and certainty are different things. In the car, she handed him her portfolio. He turned each page carefully, taking his time. Photos of Danny standing with assistants. The empty booth at the Golden Griddle. His own hands captured in moments he didn't remember being photographed. "You took pain and made it art," he said, voice thick. She shook her head. "I took our story and made it visible. Everything you taught me about being seen, this is what came from that." Their kiss was deep and steady, full of relief and promises kept. "Come home with me," she said. "Danny's waiting. Chinese food and a movie. Just like old times." He smiled, then reached into his bag and pulled out a folded letter. "First, this." He told her he wrote it his first week inside and rewrote it 100 times. It spoke about love as daily choice. About change being earned slowly. About wanting a real life with her. Not perfect. Honest. "I can't offer a fairy tale," he said quietly. "My past exists. People will judge you for choosing me. But I can offer loyalty, truth, and love that sees you completely. Will you have me as a partner? Not as a project. Not as rebellion. Yes, she said without hesitation. Always yes. They drove back toward Chicago with his hand in hers. Indiana farmland faded into Illinois suburbs. Then the skyline rose, familiar and welcoming. Brendan would start at a halfway house, with rules and supervision, but life was opening again. He had sold what needed to be sold. What remained was legal. Modest. Enough. Loretta's Logan Square apartment waited. She had kept it, loving its history and meaning. Danny greeted them with Chinese food already ordered and an old movie cued. Tradition is tradition, he said. Welcome home. Later, after Danny went to bed, Loretta and Brendan sat on the small balcony overlooking the quiet street. The air smelled like growing things. The neighborhood settled into sleep. What happens now? She asked. Now we live, Brendan said. We build something ordinary and extraordinary. We work, create, argue, make up. We face complications together. That sounds messy, she said. It sounds real, he replied. And real is worth trusting. They sat in comfortable silence. Loretta thought about the journey. About choosing and being chosen. About love not as safety, but as presence. Brendan had changed her forever, not by saving her, but by loving her honestly. She had changed him too, pulling him toward light. They didn't know what lay ahead. But in that moment, certainty lived in the present. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that? Thank you, truly, thank you for spending these moments with me. Every time you watch, every time you listen, every time you allow these characters to touch your heart, you give life to this channel. Your support is the reason these stories continue to breathe. We're on a journey together, one built on love, heartbreak, healing, and resilience. And now, we're reaching for a new milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It's a big dream, but it's a dream we can reach together. If you've been enjoying these stories, if you've ever felt seen, moved, comforted, or inspired by them, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a message that these stories matter, that this little storytelling family is growing, and that we're building something beautiful here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And thank you for being part of this journey. Let's reach 10,000, side by side.